Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Founders Table. This podcast is focused on conversations with current founders to deconstruct their lessons and tactics in order to help you build your own startup. If you like this podcast, don't forget to rate and subscribe in your podcast app. This will keep you up to date on latest episodes, as well as help others find out about the show. Today, my guest is Jake Johnson, co-founder of Crew, an AI-powered HR platform that recruits, vets, and pays out teams globally. Prior to Crew, Jake worked as a PM at Microsoft and as an ESPN commentator while attending college at Dartmouth. In today's episode, we talk about lessons from doing ESPN broadcasting and focusing on yes and, getting to Y Combinator with the condition of needing to come up with a new idea, and the importance of validating ideas with actual sales. Now, without any further ado, I give you Jake. Jake, welcome to Founders Table. Glad to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
There's a lot of places to start. And before we dive into your startup life, I noticed that prior to all of this, you were a broadcaster for ESPN kind of back in your college days. I'm curious how that came about and what you took away from that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I am obsessed with sports. I mean, it's just all I think about when I'm not at work and all I like to do. And so, unfortunately, I was not exactly the strongest, the fastest kid growing up. And so I realized that I could talk a lot better than I could play. And so in high school, I became a broadcaster for all the live streaming of our football games. And I just fell in love with broadcasting. So when I got to college, I was out in rural New Hampshire going to Dartmouth. And it's really hard to get professional broadcasters to come out to rural New Hampshire to broadcast these games. And so I was in the right place, right time, writing for the school newspaper. And I was in the hockey broadcast booth, and I heard that they didn't have a broadcaster for the next week. So I went and I knocked on doors in the AD's office. And I just said, hey, I've got broadcast experience. I'll do it. And I kind of like sweet talked my way in, and they knew more or less that they were getting somebody who had never called a pro game before. But I made it sound like I had hockey experience, I think. And I ended up, I've still got a picture from that day where I'm holding the ESPN microphone. I'm wearing my suit. We've got the lights, the cameras. It's 5,000 people in the background in a sold out college hockey arena. And it was just a dream come true. And I crushed it that day. And so they had me back for the next 3 years. And I called men's, women's hockey, men's, women's soccer, basketball, lacrosse, kind of everything. They ever needed a backup guy to throw in there and just talk to save airtime, and they threw me in.
That's amazing. And I am sure, I feel like a lot of those skills kind of overlap with running a startup, like hearing about an opportunity, sizing it when it was there, but kind of preparing yourself ahead of time. What makes for, I don't want to go too long of a discussion, but what makes for a great broadcaster? Like, what do you think, you've learned in that process?
So I'll give you one that I think makes for a great a great teammate at a startup, as well as a great broadcaster. It's the same rule, and it's the number one rule of improv acting. It's the yes and rule. So it's okay to disagree as teammates and as a broadcaster, but when in doubt and somebody says something, you say yes and, not no but. So if you ask me a question and I'm a little confused, I'll be like, yeah, and let's go here with it. Rather than if I, in a public forum or in front of people or, unprepared, say no, all of a sudden we have no chemistry. We have no next logical thing to talk about, and we don't have any momentum towards a common ground goal. So it's totally okay in broadcasting as teammates to disagree with each other. But when in doubt, it's always easier to agree and try to support each other rather than disagree and fight each other.
Absolutely. I think not just podcasting, entrepreneurship, but in general when working with people.
Friends, honestly, like to make friends, yes and is such a great rule.
Absolutely. Then now let's jump forward to today. You're in YC. You went through YC. You're running a startup. How did that come about? Did you always know this was something you were going to do, or what led to this?
That's a really interesting question that you're phrasing specifically. No, I had no idea I was going to go to YC. That was very sudden. Uh, Being an entrepreneur, though, I think was always kind of innate for me. Whether it was like the getting into the broadcasting thing, I started a startup in high school that failed miserably, but like I've always been entrepreneurially minded of like I want to go create something. And then I ended up in big tech, which I mean is the exact opposite of being at a startup. I was on a pretty stagnant team at Microsoft. It was really cool technology, but it wasn't uh, AI driven, and it wasn't a small team, and there's a lot of bureaucracy in big companies, and so the dynamic was very different. And my best friend from college called me and was like, "We should start a company," and I was like, uh, "No, like I have a great job, I'm learning, I enjoy life, and like we should start a company." And I was like, "Okay, you're going to keep doing this, so let's try it." So we threw out an application to YC, and here we are.
I'm curious, like, how was that kind of courtship process? It sounds like he called you, you said no, and then he called you again, and then was there like a certain number of calls, or like, I guess like, at what point did you cross that threshold into like, okay, maybe I will do this and leave my cushy tech job behind?
So I'd say like once every 6 months, we used to call each other with an entrepreneurial idea. And the whole point of the phone call was, can we kill this idea? Can we come up with why this won't work? Because if we can come up with that right now in the next 10 minutes, there's no way it'll work. Uh, and he called me one day and he had just a random idea that we didn't even go to YC for, that I couldn't kill in 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, now I'll give you the time of day. And so that was the phone call in which we threw around some more ideas, and we applied more with a team than with an idea. We had a third co-founder who was that friend's best friend from high school. And the three of us knew each other and threw together an application, really just showing off how different our skill sets are and how well we work as a team. And then they accepted us with some guidance as to how to find an idea.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing then is like you guys applied and got into YC, but you didn't necessarily have an idea that you were going to go with at the time of acceptance.
Yeah, so we applied with an idea that had no merit, and in the interview they were like, "Hey, if we accept you, like this is not going to be the idea that you run with. So start thinking of other ones." So yeah, it was definitely a team-based application, and we started from the absolute ground floor. We're at the YC retreat, and everybody's like, "What does your company do?" And we were like, "We don't know yet. We'll figure it out."
And was that hard to take? Like, I would imagine, like, if I, thought of like, this is what we're going to be building, this is, what I'm leaving my job for, this is what I'm doing an application around, and then somebody tells me, you can do this, but you just can't do this. Like, was that hard
Yeah,
to hear?
I mean, my parents thought I was ridiculous, for sure. I left my job at Microsoft, and when people said why, I said, "Oh, I'm going to go start a company," and they said, "What for?" I said, "I don't know yet," which is ridiculous. Um, and it was hard. Like, when you get into YC and when you have this exciting moving to San Francisco, I'm going to be surrounded by entrepreneurs and coaches effectively, and just be around brilliance. You kind of expect that things will be easier to come up with and ideas will be flowing. But if you've ever been an entrepreneur going through a pivot, like it's hard. So yeah, it was emotionally and mentally and even physically grueling, just like working that hard constantly.
I think when most people, especially first time entrepreneurs, think about pivots, it's like you hear about it and you think like, okay, maybe I'll have to do it, but like I believe in my idea and hopefully like this will work. But then I find like more common than not, almost everybody pivots in one way or
Yeah.
another. And um, I guess when you were going through your pivoting process, or maybe just like your ideation process, what was helpful in terms of either killing off ideas or figuring out like how to actually narrow down on which you were actually going to work on?
Uh, Great series of questions. We've pivoted multiple times because we didn't then like magically come up with one idea that stuck. Like every other entrepreneur, as you said, we continued to pivot, um, and we finally have found a little bit more traction. But I'm sure we'll get to that later. This is going to be a weird piece of advice, but mine was like go outside. We had a backyard in San Francisco, and I just found that if I was sitting down at my desk and I wasn't in flow state, like I couldn't just magically snap my fingers and get there because we didn't have anything to start with. And so going outside, taking some deep breaths, like get slowing down a little bit and then re-entering with a clear, fresh head made it all the much easier to engage in conversations, not be, short or irritable with my co-founders, and just to realize that you're trying to summit Mount Everest, but you need to find Mount Everest first. That's effectively what a pivot is. And so there's no value in getting worked up. Just staying calm makes it so much easier.
Staying calm, having clear communications. It's like, it's hard enough as it is without any additional drama added onto that. And, let's say like you've gone outside, you're calm, you're talking. What was the process like? Is it, you throw up a bunch of ideas, you pick an idea, and then you work on that until you figure out if you can or cannot? Was there a process, or was there just more organic of like, we're going to try this until it doesn't feel right?
Yeah. It depends on what stage we were at when we were pivoting. So the first pivot, we didn't know what we were doing. So I don't even know if I have like advice to offer from that, other than we were attending office hours. We'd come up with an idea, we'd listen to feedback, we'd be like, no, not that one. And we'd hear what other people were talking about, and it kind of guided where we ended up, which was our CEO came from an investment bank. So we were like, we both worked in tech, the other two co-founders. You worked in banking. What we did, we could build software to automate what you did. So let's just chase down what we know. And that was dangerous. I think a huge mistake that we made was we didn't talk to nearly enough people before we started building. We didn't sell before building. We heard interest before we built, but we didn't sell. And that meant we had a lot of false signal, which I just made a video about that recently. In that people will claim they're interested, and then you spend months building, and then they're suddenly magically not interested or don't have the money for it. And so the second time we pivoted was a couple months ago now, but that time we called, we laid out 10 ideas on a whiteboard, and then we assigned them to each of us, and we each called 20 people about the idea. And we just pitched ideas and asked for pain points until we all kind of quickly narrowed down to a few ideas. And then it was just about, how many people can we talk to in these fields? How many people know more than we do? How many people are hurting in a way that we can solve? And that just talking and talking and talking is what led us out of the pivot.
Got it. And when you say the video you just put out, is this the LOI video that?
Yeah, I think so. I filmed a couple recently. But yeah, the letters of intent are false signal. I will die on that hill. If somebody signs an LOI, it means that they were not willing to give you their money.
That is fascinating, because it's, it is actually, part of, well, I think different people sound differently, but it's just like in the early stages, if you don't have a product, and LOI is at least something that people, that shows commitment, or in theory, it shows commitment. Would I guess from your experience, would you say that that's not enough? Like that doesn't actually do that?
No, there are so many other ways to do it, where you could do like, a money back contract. Hey, like you're going to pay me for this product. You're going to pay me now. And if this doesn't hit on these key deliverables that we agree upon, I'll give you your money back. Now, if people are like, if you're actually able to solve a problem that they're willing to pay for, they'll give you the money, because they'll get it back if you don't solve their problem. But if they're not willing to do some sort of money back guarantee, then they're not going to be willing to give you the money, even if it works. And so I think different industries are different when it comes to LOIs. I think that some are to be trusted a little bit more. I think financial software is really tricky because banks just do not want to work with startups. They have a very, if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. Startups are looking for customers 1 through 5, 1 through 10. Banks want to be customers 1,000 through 5,000. So we have very sour taste in our mouth trying to convince people to sign LOIs and then following through on them. I'm sure you could find success with them, but they are dangerous.
Got it. And so tell me what was different the second time around. So with the second pivot, it sounded like, you were asking people for money before you built the product. And was that right? And how, and I guess specifically, I'm interested in, how was the ask? What was the question? Did you ask during the interview or during the conversation and expected them to sign up then? Were they supposed to sign up after? But I guess yeah, how was it sales process like?
Yeah, great question. I mean, to be honest, we're still figuring out the sales process now. But in terms of selling before building, we have definitely sold before building with our current product, which currently what we do is we help American startups find offshore talent to help make it easier to move really quickly within software engineering. Uh, and when we got, we're by no means are we the first company to enter this space. And so we were talking to fellow batchmates at YC about their process of finding offshore developers, and there were a couple pain points. And we came to an agreement, hey, if we find your guy, will you pay us according to this structure? And they said, sure. And so they signed then. And even still, we don't make money until we fulfilled the order. And so we just had them sign the contract that, hey, if we end up filling this order, you'll pay us. And they signed. And then we said, okay, now let's go see if we can fill it. And so we did a very manual process. We reached out to 150 people through LinkedIn direct messages. Hey, can I help you find a job? And then we went through like what it was like to go through that hiring process the first time. Figured out, hey, I think we can do this. We can start automating it bit by bit. And then as we automated and we realized our capacity was growing, we started to sell more and more. And that kind of led to a more official sales kickoff, which involves media campaigns on LinkedIn, a lot of content strategy, putting out the videos that you just mentioned you saw. Launching through YC, which I would love to brag about Launch YC on behalf of YC. That is an awesome tool. Stuff like that.
What I love about your sales pitch, it's one of those what I call Godfather deals. It's like I'm going to make you a deal like you can't refuse. Like you pay me nothing unless you get something out of it. And so it seems like you are making a sale, but it seems like a sale that has all upside for the buyer, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, right? Like, I don't want you to pay me if I didn't do the right job. And you came to me to do a job. And if I do it, hypothetically, you should be very excited to pay me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have hired me. So, yeah, I think we have a pretty high satisfaction rate with the style of contract that we sign for that reason. And also, if we find somebody who realizes they're not interested in the product or they figure out they don't have this need anymore, I don't want them to be really upset with us and not refer us because they spent 10 grand with us and then didn't use us. You pay us when you use us and then refer us whether or not you successfully used us, because you're probably going to have a good taste in your mouth.
So I have one more question before focusing on your current startup, which is for your financial, your V1 before that, the financial startup with the LOIs. At what point did you know that was not going to work and essentially just make the decision to pivot again?
It was when we reached what should have been the minimum viable product and nobody was willing to buy. It was always we realized that like when we set out to build what we thought we were going to build, people said, as soon as you hit these deliverables, we'll buy. And then we hit more or less those deliverables, minimum viable product style. And then as soon as we did that, they came up with 3 more things we needed to build. And then we did those. And then there were 3 more. And once we did that for the second or third time, and like it should have been time to get a sale and they still had more deliverables, we realized we were caught in a never-ending cycle. And, our group partners warned us of this months ahead of when it happened. And because of the LOIs and because of the relationships we had in the financial world, we thought that it would go through. And then once they said, hey, is this happening? We sat back and we said, yeah, I think it's time to pivot.
Got it. So it sounds like, you tried to meet the minimum viable requirements, you got asked for more requirements, and after like 2 more rounds of that, decided like it was not going to work.
Yeah, we knew that no matter how many times we kept coming back, they wanted a perfect product. Everybody in banking wants something perfect. They don't want anything that could break. And it makes sense, but they don't want anything that could break. They don't want to be the first users. They don't want to be design partners. And so they keep having feature requests. And they're not even using the product yet.
Now, let's switch gears and talk about your current startup, which Crew. You mentioned like selling to companies before like going in on this. At what point did you feel confident that this was something that you wanted to put your chips on? Is it, after like you had contracts from 10 companies, 100 companies, or like, like what was the threshold?
It was after the first sale that we said, let's spend, a week on this. That was something we were bad at the last time around. It's something that we've learned as a team is like, you don't have to go all in on an idea at really any point. I mean, it happens naturally, but we had the first contract in place. So we said, okay, let's spend a week fulfilling this. And once we spend a week fulfilling this, if we actually do, let's come back and let's do a post-mortem and see if we can do it better. And if we can do it better and we think we can scale that, then let's try it. And then if we can't scale it in a month from now, we don't have anything, then let's hit the drawing board again. But as long as we kept growing and hitting those metrics, then we continued to go more and more in. And you said at one point, did you put all your chips in? I think that to some extent has some insinuation of product market fit, which I think it's bold of any seed stage startup to claim they have product market fit. I mean, it's something that we're definitely chasing and we're finding traction, but I don't think we have product market fit just yet. I think we're getting there.
Yeah, it's the goal that every startup, I would say, beyond seed. I think much later stages, you just find it in different areas where you found, even if you found product market fit, it's like, you find it for your second product or your second service.
Yeah.
It kind of never ends.
For sure. I mean, there's no telling exactly what's next. I think it would be irrational to think that we will start a company with this idea of we help people find offshore development and we will end the company by doing that one thing and we'll never grow. To think that we'll never, come up with a new and improved piece of the HR equation but continue to live in the HR stack would be a ridiculous thing for me to try to predict right now, because I don't think that's what we want to do. We want to grow.
Right. And where are you today? So if a company were interested in your services, first, like, how do you describe yourself, and what do you offer today?
Yeah, we find, source, vet, and place the world's premier talent at your company. And we are launched, so you could just go straight to our website and effectively, like a shopping cart, offer interviews to people that you find really exciting and then get connected with them. If you have a boilerplate interview system where you've already built out a test that you want people to take before joining your company, you can send it to them, or you can ask us for the assessments that we gave our candidates and you can judge based on those. Or you could reach out to us, and if you want to do like a larger placement, spinning up a team of 5 or a team of 10, you'd reach out to us and we can do it a little bit more manually, a little bit more hands-on, white glove style. But yeah, so we're a launched product.
Got it. And how is kind of the things in the back end? So I notice on your website, you talk about building an AI-powered HR platform. And I think it's pretty common that basically all AI platforms have, especially at the seed stage, are a lot of more manual operations components to it. And so where are you today in terms of like how much of this is automated or how much of this is manual, and kind of how are you thinking of building this out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is, how much is manual, how much is AI based, and how did you get from point A to point B, and where are we going? I think that's what the question is here.
Exactly.
So the answer is, I'm really proud to say we're a lot further towards automation than we are manual at this point. So we quickly realized that if we were going to find and vet 10, 20, 30,000 people, we have 4 full-time employees in New York, we couldn't set up interviews and we couldn't test everybody like this. But we didn't just want to send out, a leak code problem that people could copy and paste into a GPT or a Gemini and then send back. And so we had to come up with some sort of way, a vetting system to vet at scale. And so we came up with ways to interview them internally, all at the same time, completely automated. And that involves a behavioral interview. It involves a technical interview. And then the grading all happens autonomously. And then we come in and we look at the top graded ones, and then we admit them to the platform. And so then, yeah, there's definitely still some manual fixes when somebody says, hey, something broke, or like, why is nobody coming up on this search for Java as the top skill? It's like, oh, something's broken. There are definitely bug fixes that we go in and do. But for the most part, there are candidates that join our platform every day that I will only see at the very end who get recruited, take their entire assessment, get moved on to another round, take another assessment. Their entire performance is summarized to me. I look at them, I select the top performers, and I put them on the platform.
Got it. And then for your, so it sounds like it's kind of like a two-sided marketplace. Of one hand, you have candidates that want a job, and the other side, you have employers that want to find top candidates.
Mm-hmm.
And you essentially do the assessment and matching and everything else.
Yep.
For when I think about this industry, I think of companies like TripleByte, that was another YC company, and TopTal, and I guess like the hiring category is pretty crowded. How, I guess, where do you see yourselves compared to incumbents?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think this is general YC advice. The more incumbent a company is, the more likely they are to be vulnerable to somebody coming into the space, right? The smaller and more agile a startup is, the faster they're going to be able to move. And the larger a company is, the more they're going to be caught up in bureaucracy and struggle to adapt to fast changing environments. I will also point out the fact that you were just able to name several competitors shows that this is not a winner take all space, right? So the faster and more agile you're willing to be, the more of the market you're going to win. But I think it's also important to suggest that this is a great entry point into the world of HR tech. And so when we initially entered into this idea, it wasn't necessarily the first idea we had regarding HR tech, but it was a very clear-cut, easy way to understand the end-to-end hiring process. Now that I have to take an applicant and get them placed, I now understand way more about ATSs or applicant tracking systems, or the pain points recruiters have when they go out and they try to fill a role that has 3,000 applicants. And so we are currently like sponges. We're absorbing every part of the journey of placing contractors. And then we're trying to synthesize all of this information that's coming in and figure out where the places to grow are.
What has been so far the hardest challenge in HR tech and specific to your career?
This is a really great question. I'm noticing an inverse correlation between size of the company and willingness to incorporate AI, which is really fascinating. Recruiters at large companies are looking for solutions and they're bound by two things that scale and compliance. They're terrified of legal disputes. And so using an unproven AI could open them up to a bunch of compliance issues that, quite frankly, I don't understand because I don't work in employment law. But they are really hesitant to use AI-based tools that make decisions on candidacy. But they're also the companies that typically need the most help getting through all of their candidates. So that's something that I'm thinking about every day. I'm learning more about the issue. There are certain large companies in certain industries that are more excited about AI than others. There are certain who are unapproachable about it because they already have internal AI teams building tools. And so learning that space has been really challenging, but really exciting.
What KPIs or metrics do you currently track to know if you are on the right track?
Interesting question. It completely depends what we're talking about. So if we're talking about trying to place a candidate at a new job opening, I want to track how many matches we've made, how many people went through the interview process and got to the job. I want to know how many people signed up on our platform, looked at our marketplace, and then didn't convert, and figure out what's going on there. So those are some KPIs that we can look at. When it's coming to the, why are big companies able to, or why are big companies averse to using AI versus why are small companies excited about it? I don't have KPIs for those yet. These are research questions that are open, that we're thinking about every day. And I think once we create hypotheses to go out and prove it, that's when we'll establish the KPIs.
This reminds me of what you said earlier of not going all in, especially in the beginning, but kind of learning incrementally and based on incoming data, and then essentially iterating from there. Mm-hmm. Since it sounds like you have been using AI in your product, that's kind of core of what you guys do. Any learnings on that front in terms of what has been I guess, more effective than what you thought, or what anything that has been more effective, anything that's been harder than what you think it could be? What's been, where has AI been effective in this HR space that you guys are going into?
AI, as it stands right now, like LLMs specifically, are really great at basic conversational actions. And when you try to get them to do more complicated things, you lose accuracy and you add a bunch of noise into the equation. And so I remember with the first startup that we were working on, we were trying to do too much for GPT 3.5, which is what we were running on. And realistically, a GPT 5 or even 6 is probably going to do everything we needed. So one of the things that we struggled with at first was not trying to over leverage the tools that we are using and trying to break things down into small enough tasks that are actually accomplishable with the technology that we have access to. There's a lot of puzzle pieces on the board. We just want to make sure we use the right ones and don't try to make them fit into two places at once.
Got it. And so right now specifically, it sounds like, you're using AI, you mentioned earlier, like for behavioral questions and kind of other sort of questions. Has that, I guess, like, are there any other parts or like that it's being used in the pipeline?
The biggest area that we were doing it is definitely in the behavioral vetting. We're working on technical vetting where it synthesizes what some of these experiences are and then designs technical questions based on what they have done. Because if somebody's been like a data engineer, I don't want to spin up a React front end question. And so being able to have somebody completely automated submit a resume and then have their entire interview process curated based on their experiences is one of the end goals of what we're trying to develop right now. And we've definitely mastered the behavioral part, and we're actively working on the technical part.
And on the back end, are you using one model, a mixture of models, or what has been effective there?
That would definitely be a question for Millen, my co-founder.
Yeah.
As far as what we do use, I know that we use GPT and Llama. I don't know what he's found more success with, to be honest.
All good. I was curious. Then moving to go-to-market, what is your current go-to-market approach?
Right now, we're just in sell mode. And so our go-to-market approach, one great problem that we would love to have is to be overwhelmed with too many customers. That would be an awesome problem to have. And so we are employing a bunch of different go-to-market tactics. One of them is content strategy. This is such an underutilized tool that every founder has. Everybody has access to LinkedIn. Everybody can be posting videos right now. And LinkedIn Shorts just came out, or LinkedIn Videos, which is like an infinite scroll bar that you can do in LinkedIn. And because there are so few content creators right now, and because it's such a new feature, every video that gets posted gets way further reach than you would expect. So just creating content like that passes around your brand so fast and so effectively that you create a bunch of inbound leads. We do cold emails. We use an email service. Like all of the classic tips. I guess we haven't actually used an email service recently, but we have before. The most effective strategy that I've seen to gain the first few customers was a personalized cold email that was not, the intent was not necessarily to sell. It was saying, hey, I think I can solve a problem that you have. Am I right that you have this problem, and would you be open to chatting about it? And people were very willing to listen, to say, hey, if you can solve my problems, I'll talk. But it has to be a direct email. Like, you can't overuse that strategy because it takes a lot of effort to get one of those emails out. There's no way that you could properly write that email 500 times. But that was a really great outbound strategy.
Definitely. I think I think any founder that is doing B2B or does sales, you eventually gone through every single channel and kind of figure out what's effective or what is not.
Yeah.
I think LinkedIn Shorts especially are very fascinating to me because, like you mentioned, they're brand new. even though like platforms like TikTok kind of popularized it. I guess one question is, when you send out these shorts, do you just publish on LinkedIn? Do you try do
Hmm.
you post it to all the platforms, or what's kind of the distribution?
The two platforms that we utilize are LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter is huge for entrepreneurs, and as I'm sure you've seen, tech Twitter is like it's kind of like if Reddit had uh, more of a corporate side, right? Like there's definitely a lot of business connections happening in Twitter. Founders meeting up with other founders, creating group chats, sharing tips and tricks, in the same way that LinkedIn happens, but in a less corporate way. So those are kind of the two strategies that we utilize right now.
And right now, who is your ideal customer profile? Is it people
Yeah,
in HR? Is it managers?
great question. We care way more about the company that is approaching us than the person who's approaching us. We don't care if it's a founder, if it's an HR manager, if it's a recruiter, if it's a CTO. If you need to fill a role and you're the person in charge of filling the role, we can help. As far as companies go, the companies that we found are most willing to work with us are earlier stage startups who are going through a lot of the same things that we've gone through, and we can relate to. Those are the companies that we were most easily able to fill the orders at. Um, but yeah, so ideal customer, anybody willing to grow and anybody who's actively in charge of filling the roles.
And one thing I know that you and I believe your co-founders are doing is you're moving from New York now to San Francisco.
Yep.
And can you tell me about what you hope to accomplish with the move and why move in the first place?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've lived in both New York and San Francisco, both full of entrepreneurs. However, San Francisco basically only has entrepreneurs, and New York has people from all walks of life. And I love that there are so many founder driven clubs, environments, social circles, and people who are motivated by startups uh, all over the city of San Francisco. And so, being that we're in the stage of grow, 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 I want to be surrounded by people who are in grow, grow, grow mode for two reasons. Number one, they'll give us tips and tricks of how to grow, grow, grow. Number two, our customers are people who are in grow, grow, grow mode. And so by moving out to San Francisco, we'll be surrounded by potential customers as well as people who can help us learn how to grow.
Makes sense. And I mean, given also that Y Combinator is there and most of the startup kind of concentration in
Of
terms of
course.
density. Um, when, well, on the topic of YC, if you look back at your experience there and w- what kind of stands out in terms of either conversations or lessons or
Mhm.
just interactions that you had there that have been the most helpful in building your company?
The two pieces of advice that I would say I think of every day when I think back to like what did Dalton Caldwell say? He was our group partner. Um, Launch early and launch often, and sell before building, which I think we've more or less covered those. You need to be launching. Building in public is going to allow you to seek immediate feedback and iterate your product so much faster and accomplish your goals so much quicker, with a lot fewer hurdles. And selling before building will allow you to know whether or not you have validation, as well as let's say you don't have an investment from Y Combinator and you make a couple sales, you can grow with that money. You can hire an offshore developer. You can hire a marketing team. You can pay for different SaaS subscriptions. And so selling early and launching early and launching often and selling often, that combination of things is something that is really scary and unintuitive in some ways to founders, but is so, so, so important and something that I never would have known had I not gone to YC.
Yeah, until you get something in customers' hands, all you have are opinions and hypotheticals.
Yeah, exactly.
We're getting close to the end of the show, and before I move on to our closing questions, I wanted to see if there was anything else that you might want to talk about before we make that transition.
Um, no, I'm enjoying, wherever you're taking us. I'm happy to talk about whatever.
All right, I hear that yes and. So let's go to the closing. And my first question is, any advice that you would give founders starting off today, or maybe something that you
Mm,
yourself would have liked to known about when you first started?
yeah, that's easy. The emotional whiplash you're going to experience as a founder is going to be grueling, difficult. Everybody's going through it, and you need to figure out a way to cope with it quickly. Because if you don't figure out a way to cope with it, it's going to end your career as a founder. But if you figure out a way to cope with it, it's going to be thrilling. Uh, when I say emotional whiplash, I should probably follow up with what that means. Um, on any given day as a founder, you could experience euphoria, depression, neutrality, ambivalence, and euphoria again. Um, and so dealing with that incredible whiplash of emotions is really taxing. And you got to figure out a way to not sway too far one way or the other, right? So, example, the day we received our most prestigious check in our fundraise, our database crashed. And it looked like the entire thing deleted. It looked like we were starting over from scratch. And so I remember us in the morning, like just over the moon, music playing in the living room as we're, coding a little bit, but mainly just like having a great time. And then we went out to lunch and we came back and like everything was gone. And so going from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, and then realizing that we had like a backup version from like an hour before we left for lunch and everything was okay. And like that swing is so hard to deal with. And that isn't just a one-off day. That swing will happen every week. You'll get a customer, they'll churn. Somebody will publicly say they hate your product, and then their brother will sign up. Like you got to be able to stay grounded and enjoy the extreme emotions without letting them sway you.
Yeah, and it's not, I would say, just you dealing with that emotion, but dealing with that emotion in the presence and company of your co-founders
Yeah.
and navigating that together. And I guess on that topic, it's like, have you found anything effective, or what have you learned that has helped you um, work in better collaboration with your co-founders?
Yeah. So my co-founder, we have two co-founders. The one who brought us both in was my college roommate, and so we had lived together, we had fought, we had been best friends, and we had figured out what worked for our relationship through thick and thin, and that requires incredibly clear communication, frequent communication, check-ins, and the ability to divide work and personal. So we can, have a fight at work or a disagreement at work and go home and play Xbox together because we're roommates. Uh, and so that overwhelmingly clear communication, as well as the prioritization of friendship and the separation of work, has been really important and has really allowed us to go through pivots, go through moves across the country, find our first products or our first customers and revenue, and do all of these things together without it changing any of our dynamic.
So it sounds like it's almost like you switch roles. It's like during the daytime in the office, it's we are co-founder mode, and then leaving the office, finding a way to leave that behind, and then switch back into friend mode, essentially.
Yeah.
Nice. Um, then next question. When you think of success, is there anyone or anything that comes to mind?
Ooh. Well, I mean, when it comes to like YC success, there's Brian Chesky, of course, um, who we got to meet in the batch. Um, this is going to be so corny, and I don't mean for it to be, but I think the thing that I look at that I envy in people who are the most successful are the people who are happy with what they get to do. It's not the people who are chasing some dream of happiness. It's the people who enjoy the grind, whether or not they have the revenue or have the profit or sold the company or exited or have 7 houses or whatever. The people who are the most successful at what they do are the people who are enjoying what they do. Um, that's something that I strive towards getting closer to every day. I get a pretty cool job. I get to go into work with my friends from college, 2 of them, and another friend that I've made who's very near and dear to me. I get to work with cutting edge tools. I get to talk to really cool people. I get to fly all over the place and meet founders. And I get to learn every day. And that to me is so much more important for fulfillment than an exit would be. Exit will be cool. Like, don't get me wrong. But in terms of the fulfillment along the way, I think that's so much more important.
You want to enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
And, sometimes journeys are great, but sometimes it can also be tough. And in the tough moments, how do you recharge?
I'm a big outdoor person. I got to be outside. So that's another reason I'm excited about the New York to San Francisco move. Is there's so much more nature in San Francisco than New York. You can go swimming in the bay. You can go to the parks, and a lot of gyms have rooftops. And just staying active and staying outside helps keep me so grounded. Helps keep my mental health really strong. And that's something I highly encourage. If you're going to be a founder and you're not a very active person, I encourage you to find some way to get active. Keeping your body and brain healthy is going to make a huge difference.
It is so easy to gain weight as a founder as well,
Yeah.
just because you're sitting in the chair for most definitions of founders and not doing a whole lot else.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
Have there been any recent small investments in the last year or so that has had an outsized impact on your quality of life?
Oh, the way you phrased that was different than where I thought you were going. I thought you were saying, like, do you have any investor who has made a big impact? But no, you said investment that has changed your life.
Yes.
Man. I would say I really like playing hockey. You'll see where this is going in a second. It kind of ties into everything we've touched on so far. And I recently realized that I gave up hockey when I started this company just because there wasn't a team in New York where we were going, and I had just come off knee surgery and I hadn't played in a while. And I was like, hey, it doesn't matter if it's expensive or if it takes a lot of time and effort. This is what brings me a lot of joy. It's a huge workout. It'll force me to stay fit, and it'll help my mental clarity throughout the day. And so I made the leap. I bought hockey equipment again, and I joined the league. And now that's like a primary way that I work out. And it has like 1-to-1 made me happier on a daily output. The weekly hockey game that I play keeps me so much more agile throughout the week. And that's such you wouldn't think that would have that big of a deal, or an impact, but it does.
I mean, it seems like you get so much out of that, not just like exercise, but also community. And well, usually if it was anywhere outside of San Francisco, I would say like something outside of tech, but I don't know, maybe not there.
Yeah.
But
well, we'll see. Now that I'm moving out there, I need to find a new team, but maybe I'll find a techie team. Maybe I'll find a non-technical team. We'll see.
Yeah, but regardless, it seems like you'll still have hockey.
Yes, I'll figure out a way.
And then my last question, it's a 2-for-1, which is ask and offer. Do you have anything you would like to request of my audience, or anything you would like to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one request is go check out our website. If you're growing and you're a founder, I think I can help you. And so hit me up. Tell me you came from this podcast, and we'll see if we can work out a deal. We've got a deal for all YC companies right now. And then thing number 2, I'm moving to San Francisco next week. If you're in San Francisco and you want to meet up and hang out, let's do it. So you'll be able to find my socials from this podcast, I'm sure. And if you want to reach out, I'm always happy to meet new people.
Yeah, well, I will take you on, at least on the second offer, because I too will be moving out to San Francisco.
Absolutely.
So we'll be excited to see you in person.
Yes, absolutely, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. This has been great. Hey, just one more thing before you go. Thanks for listening to this episode of Founders Table. If you like the show, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also consider giving us a rating, as it helps others find the podcast. You can find all episodes as well as more information about the show at founderstable.co. Until next time, stay hungry.